So hey, thanks so much, guys, for joining me today. Silicon Heartland Sessions. Silicon Heartland Sessions is all about bringing the IT community together and celebrating our diversity, celebrating the things that make the Silicon Heartland so unique and special. I, one thing I like to say, and that I've heard other people say, is that in the Silicon Heartland, our superpower is our community. And it's guys like you that are part of the community that make this such a special place to be. So thanks for joining me today. Thank you for being a part of my tribe of mentors over these years. So really quickly, let me introduce you guys real quick. So Bryan Mundy, good friend of mine. I got to know him through the bodybuilding community. And it just so happens to be a very talented technologist, works for the city of Westerville. And I'll let you add more meat to the bone. And then we've got John Bishop. John Bishop and I go way back. We were together at Chase a long time ago. And I'm sure lots of people know you as the guy with the cowboy hat at IT Martini, and professor at OSU and so forth. So we're gonna have a discussion today. This isn't about Q&A and interviewing and everything like this. It's three guys getting together and talking about what we're passionate about. So why don't we start, Bryan? Why don't we start with you? And
Yes.
Today, I think we're gonna talk about our stories.
Thank you, Sean, and everyone out there. I want to start by letting people know some inside talk. We had a chance here for about the last 15 minutes to chat and get to know each other a little bit on the back end. And we made the decision, or maybe I should say I made the decision to go first. And I do want to say, for everyone that's out there listening, I know all of us are out there online, and I have Bryan Mundy on LinkedIn. If you check me out on there, you'll see some conferences that I've had a chance to go to, and I do videos. And one of them that I've done even recently at Google is I walk all the way up to the front of the classroom and try to get out there first and strike and see what I can learn to, just scare myself and keep it real. Question for you, Sean. I don't know how this is going to pan out, but are we going to get like a lower third here, or are we just doing it live when it's produced?
Hey, we will figure it out, man. No, whatever is comfortable for you guys.
Well, yeah. I mean,
and anyway,
fair warning.
no matter how you slice it, we're going to make a splash.
Well, fair warning, you got me in here now, so you guys are all going to have to deal with the Monday. Like, this is how it's going to work.
Awesome.
So yeah, as far as my history goes, I want to tell a story. Sean, he's going to be our timekeeper and referee and keep us all in line, and I need all the help that I can get. So, with that being said, yes, I'm Bryan Mundy. Correct. I've known Sean for about almost 5 years. We met at the end of 2019. We started our journey together by training for a bodybuilding competition in 2020 that unsurprisingly got canceled for that pandemic that we had. In case you haven't heard of it, it was COVID-19.
Yeah, that was rough.
Yeah, it was. And, myself, I've had the opportunity to be in the technology industry since 1996. I'm not going to go crazy deep, but this is a Silicon Heartland technology podcast. So, to kind of give you guys some meat to chew on here, I had the opportunity out of high school. I had a scholarship. I got to move to Columbus, and I went to um, Marion Technical College and then OSU, and I applied at a tiny company called CompuServe. CompuServe in 1996 offered me a job and a salary that made me decide that I didn't need to go to college anymore. So, all these years later, maybe I'm kicking myself a little bit for jumping out, but I'll tell you, since then, it's been a hell of a ride. So, I had an opportunity at CompuServe. There's some things that happened with CompuServe, WorldCom, AT&T mergers. I don't know if you guys heard about the .com boom out there and bust. Something to see. Yeah. And during that time, CompuServe folded into AOL. I got a chance to work for another place here in Ohio called Sun TV. Sun TV had a great program with warranty repairs, building their own computers. I had a great time there. And then same thing, they ended up folding and going out of business. So that brought me to government work, and I started a job at the city of Dublin, Ohio. Got a chance to build my career there as the network administrator, which means I got to lead a team of about 3 people at the time. One of our first orders of business was to install internet in 1998, 1999 at Dublin. Pretty exciting stuff.
Oh yeah.
And then 2004, I got the chance to come over to Westerville, Ohio. West side is the best side, as I like to say, and that's where I'm at today. All the while, just for your own information, I've also ran my own business. I own and operate a business called Mundy Tuned. And Mundy Tune does several things. Primary focus is engineering and consulting as it relates to the automotive industry.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds boring, so let me simplify it. If you've got yourself a big souped up race car and you want to put it on a machine and have the carburetors, your fuel injection dialed in and make all the horsepower, you come and see me.
There you go,
And
man.
that's been a great ride as well since 1998. So um, that's my professional side of things. And then all the while, there's a fitness journey, which is really what we're here to talk about.
There you go, man.
So with that being said, if we go back to, I talked about time frame dating myself a little bit, the 1996 time frame. But before that, my personal journey is, school age, a young child. I had a hell of an opportunity with my family. My dad had an engineering job at Honda of America. Um, and he did electrical engineering, which turned into technology. And I had the chance at a young age to play with computers and laptops that he would bring home, and I, got into BBSs. Point is, I did no physical exercise whatsoever. So when you want to insert whatever stereotype you want to have for the archetype of a Gen Xer sitting at home, drinking Mountain Dew, eating Doritos, watching MTV, playing video games, and messing around with computers, that was me.
Love it.
And yeah, and that's I couldn't be more serious.
I'm
And
with you, man.
as
That
yeah,
resonates with me. That brings back a ton of great memories, by the way.
right. Well, and I know we've talked too about like even music, like if it's like 80s, like Depeche Mode, we were talking about, and like
Yeah,
the
man.
call.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I'd love playing music, which translated into MP3s and geeking out, but no physical exercise. So, um,
But Bryan, before you continue, what I want to know is how fast was your first modem?
my first modem, well, it depends. So I had a 1200 baud modem, and I had two. I had the actual one that you took the handset and put the phone on,
Yeah, yeah,
Ah,
yeah, man.
yes.
Like
and
war
then my
games.
mom, yeah, and then my
Yeah, the phone
mom,
coupler.
it was yeah, and then my mom had a job at Walmart, and we got a Real Hayes 1200 baud modem, and that was actually on a fancy computer. Like I said, my dad did technology work at Honda, well, electrical engineering. And at home we had a IBM. It was called a PS2, and they had micro channel, and it was such a big deal at the time.
Oh
Um,
yeah, it was
so,
IBM's answer to Microsoft, right? They were
yeah,
trying to be
OS
competitive with
two
Windows. Yeah, OS2.
the OST Warp Master here. I got a chance to do that internship. Anyways, we could. I'm telling you, tech stuff. We could go. It'd be fun. Um, so as far as the fitness goes, through high school, didn't really do any sports. I was active in the IT community. I did some video gaming. I played in Deathmatch '95, which was an ID sponsored tournament that was all dial up before internet to play Doom. That's about as far as I got when you're talking about any kind of competition. Fast forward through college, I left. I worked there at CompuServe when I was at Dublin. I've always struggled with, I always struggled with my weight. I always struggled with my health. I had a lot of indigestion problems, weight gain. So, for example, when I do my bodybuilding competition, my show rate weight is usually somewhere between 150 and 165, depending on what year it is and what I'm doing. At that time, I was about 220 pounds,
Wow,
which
man.
wow, right. And some people will say, well, that's not that much. Well, it's a lot for me. Um,
It is a lot, man. How tall are you?
I'm 5'8".
Yeah. So that, yeah.
And
Your,
my,
your, your bone structure, your height, all those things make a big difference. 80 pounds is a lot of weight, man. Have you seen those videos where they're like, here's what 5 pounds of muscle looks like. Here's what 5 pounds of fat looks like. And it's like, really? Like it's eye opening.
that is so true. And I'm glad that you're saying that, because what happened is, with my fitness journey, I got sicker and had more problems. And at Dublin, I was doing a lot of work with our police department. That's actually one of my primary focus, was to modernize police. And we had these new modems in the cars, and we're going to have real license plate lookups. And I was sick, and I was actually at the doctor, diagnosed of being pre-diabetic. They actually prescribed me insulin. So I was actively taking insulin. Also had digestive issues. There was a couple times I was at the hospital for, thinking I had a heart attack. And this actually, come to find out, happens quite frequently. It was actually indigestion and stomach problems just from my diet, like diet, lack of exercise. And at the police department, I got a chance to work with the team at Dublin's police department. I want to call out, in case they ever see it, you never know if this goes out public, Evan Pridham was one of the detectives there that took interest in me for whatever reason, and talked about fitness.
Mm-hmm.
And how old were you at that time, Bryan?
That would have been 2003. So I was about 24 years old.
Wow. So you were having indigestion problems and pseudo heart attacks in your early 20s, mid 20s.
So I want, yes,
man,
yes.
incredible.
And I also want to reinstate, I did pretty much no physical activity.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was whatever someone that's out there listening today thinking, man, they're talking, but I'm really bad. I really eat some bad stuff. Like, I don't get up, I don't move like I should. That was me.
Mm-hmm.
My day would consist of, McDonald's. Do you guys remember Pizza Hut used to have a thing called a Big New Yorker?
Mm-hmm.
It was a pizza that they had, and it was like $10. And I'm like, well, I can get like 2 of these and it'll last for a day and a half. I mean, that was just my life. No big deal. I'm busy. But Evan and the police took a liking to me and gave me the opportunity to use their brand new fitness facility at the Dublin Justice Center. They had a weight room, they had treadmills, ellipticals, and he introduced me to Arnold's Encyclopedia of Bodybuilding, as well as some basic plans on what they were doing. So in 2003, 24 years old, closer to the beginning of the year, it was February, March timeframe, they got me on a plan where I'd come in and I would start by walking and then run and work my way up to running a mile on the treadmill. At lunch, this was at the lunch break, right? They'd let me come down there for lunch. I'd do that. And then I'd back it up by about 30 to 45 minutes of lifting, just whatever they wanted me to do.
There you go.
And in about a 5-month time frame, I went from over 220 pounds to about 165 to 170 pounds.
Oh my gosh, that is insane.
And that included diet, because part of the Encyclopedia of Bodybuilding, they taught, I want to lead by saying, or I want to reinstate, a lot of it for me. Yeah, of course, I'm not stupid. I know that eating pizzas every day isn't great, but you don't really know how, like, you hear the joke, well, it's actually got the 4 food groups in it, and I mean, I was that person. So I would say during that time, it was one of the best times of my life, looking back on that, 20 years ago. Just the changes, realizing that I can have control over something, that I can make a real difference, something that's always bothered me, open up a whole new world of possibilities, just like technology. When you learn about whether it's AI, it was just mind blowing, revolutionary change.
Hey, Bryan, I am curious. So that is an amazing story. Losing that much weight in such a short amount of time. Obviously going to the gym, that's one side of the equation. Also, I have to imagine that, when you're eating like Pizza Hut and things like that, those, sure, all 4 food groups are in there, but there's tons of chemicals and everything in those foods as well that can be addictive. And I have to imagine that 5-month period was a time of struggle for you. And I'm just curious if you could maybe talk a little bit about, what was the thing? Was there a moment, and maybe it was a culmination of the conversation you were having with your doctor about being pre-diabetic and having all these gastrointestinal issues and things like that? Maybe that was the thing. But was there a moment that was kind of like the tipping point for you? You're like, you know what, I got to make a change, or was it more gradual than that? Because the other thing is, you were obviously working out with police officers and things like that, and maybe just they were inspirational. I'm just curious as to.
This is the moment when I think, man, this podcast could go for so much longer. because that question that you asked, and I'm sure it's the same as you, there's so much more nuance in here than just the way that I'm saying it right now.
Yeah.
So leading up to that, when I say that I had some stomach problems and I went to the hospital, when you call 911 and you're taken in an ambulance to the hospital, this isn't a small deal. So for someone like me, as far as I know, this is absolutely the end of my life. I mean, I'm in an ambulance with chest pains, not knowing if am I going to die? Is this the end of the road for me? So I would say that that's something that scared me a lot. But that's not the tipping point of, I would say, why it happened. I think the tipping point was when I would talk to the police officers at Dublin. Many of them really worked pretty hard to be in shape. There was a lot of guys there that were, especially at the time for me, I looked up to my idols. And they listened and were aware of what my struggles were. And some of them have even had friends, family, and even themselves that had been through the same journey, kind of like me. And they told me, and Evan really was, he was the guy that came down every day with me, for a good 6 months, and like literally worked out. He loved the Scorpions, and I listened to the Scorpions. So like we had a connection. But he told me, and you know how these times in history that mold you, you'll never forget. He told me, listen, I want you to start doing this plan. And it was work up to the mile on the cardio. You got to do 20 minutes cardio. This is just things he said. We can dig into our mantra later. Start thinking about the food that you eat. You need to think about calories. It needs to be a certain amount per day. I don't even want to tell you what the numbers were because they were low.
I believe it.
But he said, it's going to suck. You're not going to like this shit. It's going to be crazy, but you need to give me 2 weeks. If you can give me 2 weeks, you're going to see a difference. So
that's amazing,
and I'm
man.
I'm going to dig into it. Now you're going to start thinking about things we've talked about over the years, and it's going to make sense to you. I'm like, Evan, dude, I'm the only IT guy here. You guys don't understand. Like IT, everything's on fire. You have no time. I'm running from here to there. I can't make food. I can't do this shit. And he's like, well, I'll tell you what you're going to do. You're going to get cans of tuna and cans of fish. And then I want you to get some salad. I want you to throw it in your refrigerator, because we have refrigerators at the different buildings. We'll have one here at police, have one over at the other facility. And there were almonds and peanuts, right? And rice cakes. That's the first time I ever learned about rice cakes. So, I mean, I went pretty hard. We went in and started doing this stuff. Anyways, I went 2 weeks. And I don't really remember exactly how those 2 weeks went at the time, but I did go. I went there. I made an effort. I can tell you that I cut back the McDonald's. They used to be called McFlurries. I cut out all the McFlurries I was doing, running between the buildings and everything like that. And no joke, the first 2 weeks, I lost 14 pounds. And
wow, man.
When that happened, that was my light switch. I'm like, holy.
That was your tipping point, man.
Like,
that was the moment.
They talked all this shit for the last, I had been working at Dublin from, late 1998 to 2003. So, I mean, I'd been there all the years, and, I saw them talk to, but I'd never done anything. When I did it and I responded to it, I'm like, oh my God, like this really is how things work. It actually makes a difference when you have a routine. So hopefully that answers your question, Sean.
Yeah.
Feel free to dig and go from there. But
yeah, let me. So if you don't mind, the one thing that I think is really resonating with me and with your story is that, number one, in your entire life story, you had a 2-week period that was the difference maker for you. And it was a culmination of, number one, somebody showing you, other people inspiring you and showing you what can be done over the course of 2 weeks. The other thing I would say that was obviously leading up to it was fear. Fear of dying, fear of, but to me, knowing who you are and hearing this story, the other thing that I think, and probably in my opinion, you can tell me if I'm off base here, but I really think the reason why that fear was so powerful for you and the reason why they were so inspirational to you is because you are unique. That, to me, your superpower is your love for life. You have this love for life. You want to keep going. And, when that moment hit, I think it was a reconciling for you that just changed your life's trajectory.
I don't think it could be overstated, the epiphany or the revelation that I had. I didn't know everything that it would turn into, and I'm still learning every day, but that was the turning point. And I agree. I have a love, and we'll dig into this, later with other topics and episodes as well. But I
Yeah.
really do have a passion for life, and I think that's what drives a lot of things, including fitness, because I want to go get it. I want to
There you
go
go,
get
man.
after it.
Hell yeah.
What jumps out at me, Bryan, is what I like to call accountability. And I think that there's this misnomer, and I know we're going to get to this later, Sean. So I'm just, maybe jumping a little too far ahead,
No
too
worries,
fast
man.
here. But
Hell yeah.
There's this misnomer that you can just get a membership to a big gym, and it's all good. Your fitness routine and everything will just fall into place, and you'll lose all this weight and be strong. But in reality, I don't think that ever really happens with anybody that I've seen who's had a successful fitness journey. Mm-hmm. There's always a moment where there's a mentor or somebody that comes in and helps with accountability. And I wonder, do you ever think about what would happen if you never had that accountability? Do you think you'd still be? I mean, do you think you would have found it eventually, or do you think you'd still be eating pizzas and dead at age 30? And I mean, do you ever kind of rewind the clock and wonder, ask those questions?
I hindsight, right? And the what if, I truly believe that when I do my best to put myself in my perspective, from early 20s, I don't think that I would have figured it out myself without someone to literally, I'm going to say some words and pay the consequences later, literally spoon feed me the basics of how it needs to be. Not because I would even say that I was even ignorant, not even ignorant, certainly not stupid, not even ignorant. I just had no idea. It couldn't have been more foreign to me. Just the thought of the way that diet and exercise even works. And I'm saying that maybe partially because from then, and I know Sean knows, and John, for you as well, I have a group of people, and many people, dozens that I've trained over the years.
Mm-hmm.
Just not professionally, just partnerships that I form with people at work, friends, family, whatever. And I say it that way because I know when I talk to them, I can see the same things. And people, when you talk about food, one of the examples that I could make is, I could say you really need to think about bumping up your protein. And someone can look at me, as serious as a heart attack and say, well, I am bumping up my protein because I've been eating rice. That's not I'm not that was where I was. I had no idea.
Yeah. I hear
If you would ask me about in my 20s, and when I was younger, so you talk about the modem and dial up. Well, I used to love watching TV, and I loved the Ultimate Fighting Championship.
Oh, hell
I
yeah.
loved watching that when it first came out, all UFC 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Heck, when I was a kid, I loved WWF wrestling. I loved those big guys, big Arnold, like movie stars. But if you would have asked me at any point, like, well, how do you think somebody's like Arnold? I'm like, well, he does drugs. Like I had no idea. I didn't know the
Same.
kind of
Yeah.
things that are attainable. So
There you go, man.
Yeah.
There you go, man. What an inspiring story. Thanks, Bryan. The one thing that I would, before I transition over to you, John, that really resonates with me is that, your motivation, and again, you're into bodybuilding and things like that. And I think it's a natural connection to say, hey, look, the reason why he got into it is because he wants to have 21-inch biceps. He wants to be huge like Arnold Schwarzenegger. He saw, Conan the Barbarian when he was growing up, and he wanted to be huge and all this. And that's not it. This is about
Right.
longevity for you. It's about, going back to what you're saying, man, it's about, living this wonderful life. That's really, and by the way, before I forget, yes, I hear you. I know that you train a lot of folks, but just being you and living the life that you live and walking the walk, you've inspired many, many more, including myself. So thank you, man.
Thank you.
All right. Well, hey, that's going to be a tough act to follow. I don't envy you.
Well, I'll do what I can. Maybe
That's all we can do, brother.
maybe you can add some CGI later, Sean, in post-production. Get me
Some AI.
get me some hair or a cowboy hat or I don't know, something.
Make him
Yeah,
like
man.
the T-1000. He can transform.
Mhm.
There you go, man.
Yeah. No, this is good. It's so rare that I get a chance to hang with some folks of my era. I work with people that are much younger than me. I teach people who are much younger than me. As a matter of fact, I usually take a poll. This time, for summer semester, I didn't take this poll, but with most of my classes, I say, hey, raise your hand if you were born in the 1900s. And it's like I might get one person who was born in the 1900s. And so anyway, it's great
awesome
to connect with you guys and, be able to talk about the 80s and the 90s and even the 70s a little bit. I know we weren't around in the 60s, and at least I don't think so. Maybe Bryan, were you like 69 by chance? I thought maybe
No.
at the
I think
max you'd be
I
at
think
69.
I think you're making me mad. It's 78. If that was
70 Oh, you're 78?
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, dang. Okay. All right. Well, I'm a 75. I'm going to date myself here.
Well,
And,
and I did want to say, if you ever wanted to geek out and talk about modems and AT command sets and how to do the carry on.
Yeah. Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, those were the days, man. The early days of tech.
Yeah.
You were talking about some of the things that were popular in I guess it was like the late 80s, early 90s, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I had a 2400 baud modem. That was the first one, and then I think within about a year or two, we upgraded to a 14.4, and boy, that was like greased lightning.
No kidding, man.
We that image download didn't take 25 minutes anymore. Now it only took
ASCII text.
8
ASCII.
minutes.
Yeah.
And anyway, and I think you guys know how that story ended, right? It all went to high-speed internet, and Columbus was early in on that with CompuServe and AOL, and a lot of the companies that you were talking about, Bryan, and boy, those were the days.
It's nostalgic.
But yeah. But I remember in the 80s, I took a class. Sean, I think you and I were talking about this. I was at a day camp, and my parents, just on a whim, they were like, "Hey, there's an offer for a class where you can learn how to program the Commodore PET in BASIC. Do you want to take this class?" And I said, "Yeah, sure. Why not? Computers, why not?" And of course, this predated BBS and internet and CompuServe and AOL and all that stuff. So I learned a little bit about BASIC, and I liked it. I thought, okay, this is kind of cool. I looked at computers as big toys in that era. I was probably 10, 12, something like that. And so, just kind of going through the 80s with all of the change that was happening at the time, computers and tech. And, it kind of manifested in our living rooms as, VHS and beta and, Walkmans with tapes. And then there was this transition to CDs. And I don't know if you guys remember going to Coconuts and looking through all these CDs and trying to find, the artists and the albums that were the coolest.
No, it was Camelot music for me.
Camelot. Yeah. Well, I, somehow, some way in that era, toward the end of the 80s and the start of the 90s, I thought, I want to get in on this. I want to be part of this tech ecosystem. But I didn't really know what that meant. I knew a little bit about computer programming. Obviously, I had done some with BASIC. I didn't really, I had a Commodore VIC-20. My parents never invested in Microchannel and OS2 and all these things, right? We just, I don't think we had the money to do that. And so I had this VIC-20 and it allowed me to program in BASIC. And, the 20 was for 20K because that was, high end back then, putting 20K into memory. And I had a tape drive where I could save my BASIC program off to a cassette tape that, looked like the cassette tapes you would put in a Walkman or buy at Coconuts or something like that. And so when I graduated high school, I thought, okay, I'm going to go to Ohio State and I'm going to be a computer engineer and, become the next Bill Gates, right? Or something like that. I had this fantasy, like somehow this would be the gateway to being a billionaire. But I'd be able to build all these things along the way. And we're talking about, an 18-year-old here, right? I mean, my mind was undeveloped. I didn't really know anything about the world. And I couldn't have predicted, nobody could have predicted where we would have ended up all these years later. So when I graduated engineering school, I found myself working as a contractor at Bank One. And I was on a team building software applications with Java. And I was just ecstatic that I got to use Java. I mean, this was like, I don't even know what this was like. This was like what iOS was 10 years ago, right? 15 years ago. I mean, it was like the leading edge of technology. Yeah. You had this servlet architecture and you had enterprise Java beans. And I mean, it was hot. It was really hot. And of course, and I could talk about Bank One forever, but I'm sure you could too, Sean.
Oh, 100%, man. 100%. Good times.
Well, yeah. So one thing led to another, and I got to be part of this big team that was building software in a browser, which of course was very hot in the late 90s, early 2000s. Everybody wanted to, get off the desktop and get into the cloud. Of course, nobody called it the cloud back then. It was like, just build the thing in the browser, right? Or just use this servlet architecture. And we had this debate about thin client versus thick client. And, this was like, nobody said, oh, just put it in the cloud. They said, well, we're going to build a thin client, which means that the compute is actually not on the desktop. It's somewhere else. Mm-hmm. So, of course, that was fascinating. I thought that was the future. I was like, again, just ecstatic to be part of this team and building these products and using this leading tech. And then after a while, I decided, you know what, I need to spread my wings and do something a little bit different. So I left the bank. This was about 8 years after I started there. And I went to another local company called AEP. And I don't mean to slam anybody at AEP, but I was horrified at how they weren't using the cloud. They weren't using thin client. They weren't doing any of these things that we were doing at the bank. And I started scratching my head thinking, man, is this how the rest of the world works? I was in a little bit of a bubble, in retrospect at the bank, where people really cared about building leading edge tech and software product. And outside of that bubble, it was a bit of a shock that wasn't happening.
Right. So I do want to tell you, by the way, at Westerville, I do a ton of work with our electric utility and I work on operational technology and SCADA. So I gotcha. Keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. So, it's the brief history of tech over the last 20 some years. Right. And, but the one thing I recognized at that time was that, the people at Chase, that was then Chase, right? Because Bank One turned into Chase.
Yeah.
I thought, there would be some benefit if the people at Chase could talk to the people at AEP. And I was like, how do we get like these engineers and tech people to talk to each other? Because like the engineers over here are doing some really cool stuff, but the engineers over here are kind of like, they're kind of being held back by certain things, right? Maybe it's leadership, maybe it's, I don't know, investment, maybe it's other things. And I wanted that, these two groups at opposing ends of the spectrum to talk to each other and just have some kind of discussion. So, as Sean alluded to before, I started hosting these events in the Columbus tech community. And of course the event was called IT Martini. And we hosted these things starting in about 2009. And I say we because it was me and my partner, Aladdin, with a bunch of interns. And we figured out how to use email and use Twitter, all these, social media tools that were then becoming popular in that era, 2008, 2009. And so we hosted some events here in Columbus, almost, one after the other every few months. And then we took our show on the road to Cleveland and over to Indianapolis and down to Cincinnati. We got a chance to meet a whole bunch of technology folks and get those technology folks talking to each other and coming up with great ideas like what Sean now talks about at Cloud Nirvana. Mm-hmm. And so it's really satisfying for me to see the Silicon Heartland thing blow up a little bit, or maybe a lot, I don't know, because I think the more these tech people talk to each other, the more we figure things out. Okay. It could be about tech, right? It could be about how to leverage the cloud, how to leverage AI, how to, maybe do some team building or focus on product and engage people in a different way than you are at your institution. But It could also be about other things too, right? Mm-hmm. It could be about fitness. It could be about any number of things. Sean, I'm looking forward to talking about my guitar journey at some point. I just started playing guitar about 12 months ago.
Awesome.
And boy, it's been, it's awesome in theory, but it's hard. Guitar is hard.
Yeah. Just like anything, man. It takes practice, it takes dedication. And like you said earlier, it takes accountability. I'm with you. That's cool.
Yeah. Accountability. And that's really the key that I found to be so interesting in my life. As I started partnering and hosting these events, all of a sudden there was a lot of accountability in a lot of different directions. Mm-hmm. And I started thinking, man, maybe this is what I need in my fitness life, because these events were kind of successful and my career was going kind of successful. I was, a consultant, and then I, started my own company and, did some other things after that. We started hosting events with the city and we won an award. And so there was a lot of cool things that was happening, a lot of cool things were happening, but, the common denominator was accountability. And, Bryan, I asked you this question because, I think any fitness journey has an element of accountability to it. And of course, people get, kind of turned off by that idea because accountability sounds like, a spreadsheet and an accountant, and there's like a, credit column and a debit column, and there's like a bottom line, and it just sounds horrible. But there's probably a better word for it too. I don't know if it's like partnership is the better word, but I like that word accountability because, it just for some reason it resonates with me. And I remember when I went to my first training session with a trainer. That was like my first taste of accountability in terms of fitness, and it cost money and it cost time, and I had to be there at a certain time, and to pay the privilege of getting some kind of fitness instruction. And so I started that in, it was maybe like 2009 or so.
Wow.
And prior to that, I was one of these people who would show up at these big box gyms and I would work on the machines, and my goals were never my goals were never met. I always wanted to, put on some weight and, lift heavy and look good, but I was never able to do that just by showing up to a membership gym and making that happen. And so what I found with a personal trainer is that I got some nutrition instruction, and I was able to make some pretty quick gains. For me, I've always had trouble putting on weight, which a lot of people are like, oh, that's the best, that's the greatest, but it's like, yeah, okay, it's great until you take your shirt off at the beach and you're the skinniest person on the beach, right? And everybody's sort of like, oh, look at that guy. He's a pencil, like a walking pencil.
Yeah.
And so I don't know what's worse, to be the walking pencil or the walking, I don't know, balloon, right? I don't know. So I started getting some instruction around 2009. I took a break for a while to get married and have kids and stuff like that. And as I was getting married and having kids, I started drinking a lot. And as you could probably imagine with the title of my event, IT Martini,
right,
you could probably imagine that there was an outsized influence of alcohol on my life. I was going to all these different cities, hosting these events, and every city was like, okay, pour me a bourbon, pour me a beer, let's do some shots. I mean, it was great to build this sense of community and have alcohol be part of that, but it was also something that wasn't really good for me. And it's different when you're in your 20s and your 30s. You can take just about anything you throw at your body.
Yeah.
Your body is, at least my body was resilient. I understand not everybody is built that way, but I was. I was able to just be hungover and function.
And I should add too. We were talking about my journey and my age. Trust me. Even today, I have so many peers and friends that their bodies are so much tougher than mine are. So by all means, I understand. Carry on.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And when I think about it, like, was my body really that tough, or did I just have lower expectations? And that's something that I think about all the time, right? Am I, to what extent is my body changing versus my expectations increasing, right? And because I drink now, and even a drink or two is, it's going to mess with me for a few days, right? It's going to mess with my sleep. It's going to mess with my ability to feel good about myself, my mental health, my physical health, my workouts. Like, all that stuff is going to be problematic, even just after a couple of bourbons, right?
100%. To your point, just to add to that, just like last week, I had an evening where I had a couple bourbons, and I actually passed out, or I fell asleep on the couch at like 8, and at like 2 a.m. I woke up on the couch and went upstairs to go to bed, and I literally, like, just the way that the alcohol affects my sleep patterns, I laid there awake for like the next 2 hours. I couldn't even go back to sleep. My heart was racing and everything. And
it's so good to hear somebody else.
I think there's something.
I went to Maker's Mark a couple weeks back. I have a place down in Kentucky, and it's the first time I had any bourbon. I just did the tasting there, and I didn't sleep right that night.
Man, it really does mess you up. I agree with you. Which isn't to say that I've stopped. I still drink. So,
well, that's the problem, right? Bourbon tastes good.
I know,
and having a little, untethered experience is great. I mean, I think, to a certain extent, that's good for your mental health, right? And
hell yeah, let us steam, man.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but of course, like, where do you draw the line, right? I mean, that's the key. Where is that line, and why? And are you observant of that? And of course, when I was doing these events, I really didn't have a line. I mean, it was like, could I get home and get to bed by 4 a.m. That was sort of like the line. And, that's not a good line, man. I mean, that's like,
good line. Yeah, no kidding,
that's,
man.
That's the kind of thing.
Hard.
That's a tough line.
Yeah. I mean, at that hour, Bryan's getting up and, running a fitness thing with 10 people. Here I am, falling asleep.
4:30 a.m. every day.
Yeah, exactly. And and I've got stories about that. Most of them are pretty ugly, but the net of it is I did get a chance to meet a lot of people, and these engineers did connect, and eventually around 2015, after I don't know, maybe about 6 years of this madness, I decided maybe it's time to stop drinking so much and focus on something else. And my trainer at that point, we were talking about what we could focus on. We were both parents of young children. We had this this kind of a new kind of madness in our lives, right? And we decided that we were going to go do a bodybuilding show together. Wow. And it was, we didn't really know what we were getting into. The lead up to that was probably about 6 months of, some intense training, 3-4 day a week training. And we didn't really know what we were doing in terms of, we had some ideas of what we were doing in terms of nutrition, but it's, nutrition to lose weight and gain muscle and be fit is different than the nutrition and really bodybuilding routine that you need to perform on stage,
Hey, John, I want to just pause on that one. You are being very political and easygoing. It is, when you're training to do bodybuilding, it could not be more intense on that preparation period. Agreed. So I'm listening. Keep going.
Yeah. Well, and so what this did is this refocused me. And I remember, the old days prior to say 2015 or 2016, when I would go to the gym, which was probably once or twice a week at the very most, I would think to myself, man, I've got this great pump. What I need to do is go out to a bar and flex. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was just like this, just ridiculous thinking. Right. and now, but eventually that got old and I was like, okay, what I really need to do is flex on stage and try to win an award and compete. Hell yeah. And so my goal shifted and so we went to, I remember going to our very first bodybuilding show, me and my trainer. His name is Juan. So Juan and I went to our very first bodybuilding show. Again, we really didn't know what to expect. We weren't really dialed in nutrition wise. This was all just it was amateur hour on many different levels.
I bet you were so scared, especially when you got there. You saw all of the other competitors. Oh my gosh, man. That's
well, sure, right. And you get this spray tan, and it's a little bit, Yeah,
man.
I don't know what to say.
And then
it's weird.
It's real. Shit gets real.
Right. So we get up on stage, and we hear all these stories, right, from different competitors, and a lot of the stories go like this. Oh, I was an amateur and I showed it to my first show and I won everything. And, I was first call out, that was a thing, when you get called out, that means, the judges like you and you move toward the middle. And I was thinking, oh man, maybe this is going to be my experience. Maybe. But of course, nothing could be further from the truth. I mean, in reality, we were not anywhere near first call out. We were not conditioned. I mean, we looked good, right? But we just weren't at a level that would have
I hear you.
Would have gotten us any kind of accolades for for our physiques. And so, at the end of the competition, the promoter says, "Well, hey, if you didn't win a trophy, there's some medals in the back that you can grab out of a bin." And so, Juan and I go to this bin and, we pull out these medals and they're, plastic, gold. And we're thinking, man, this doesn't feel good. Maybe maybe we should take this a little more seriously. Maybe we should, try to dial in next time. And as we were having this conversation, a couple of young women showed up, and I might get in trouble for telling this story, but they said, "Hey, can you do us a favor and take a quick picture?" And so I thought, okay, no problem. I'll take a quick picture.
Mm-hmm.
So I grabbed their phone and I was getting ready to take their picture. And one of these young women said, no, I want to take a picture with you.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I was like, what?
All right.
Like, here I am in the bin, pulling out this, plastic metal, confidence, like everything, just like, down in the dumps and this person was like, kind of acknowledging that I had a good physique and wanted to remember that in a photo. And I was like, man, this maybe there's something here. Maybe I don't need to feel so bad about my performance. Maybe I can actually, dial in a little bit more. So that was the confirmation that I needed to kind of go to the next show, and perform at the next show. And, the other thing that was happening around this time is that I was aging. So I remember that first show it was really my first year of being 40. And so I was feeling some age. I was feeling age catch up with me. Yep. And so as I started going to more and more shows, what I started to do was, compare myself to other folks in my category. Right. And that was very important because, all day I could compare myself to somebody who's 25 or 30 or whatever. Right. But that's an unfair comparison. Mm-hmm. So I kind of reset my goals around just being, healthy and competitive in that category. And so on the following shows, I began to look at my performance that way and compete in what's called the Masters competition, which, is maybe not too unlike the PGA, right? They have the old guys over here, competing with one another. And then, the young guys are over here competing with one another. And the Masters competition, I was able to do okay. Now, I never won any competition, never took first or second or third. My top score was a fourth place in a show in Florida. But
it's awesome, man.
But it was.
Hey, remember, all of us here, we're all amateurs.
We're all amateurs, right? And there's this fantasy that, okay, maybe I could become pro someday. And it's true. Maybe I could, right? Maybe I could be a pro Masters, fitness competitor. But, that's, balancing out that aspiration with other things is really, where I'm at. I would, for example, like to learn how to play guitar and be a good parent and
there you go,
do some renovations to my house. And so for right now, what's good for me is just being able to get on stage in this 40, soon to be 50 plus category and be competitive with this group and maybe win something one day. But for now, that's good enough. And by the way, here's one weird thing about bodybuilding that people might not know. The standard way of bodybuilding is to use performance enhancing drugs. I mean, it's real. I mean, this is how the majority of people who bodybuild get to the size that they're at. I'm not interested in anything like that. And I know you guys aren't either. And I think, to me, bodybuilding is an expression of health, similar to, your outlook on this, Bryan. It's not like winning is the most important thing. Being healthy is the most important thing. And that's something that, I would never, sacrifice my health for some silly trophy.
I have a question for you. Just a curiosity, John. So a lot of the things that you talked about, like this competition, a lot of it sounds like part of it was you wanted some reaffirmance of like what it is that you were doing, like, am I good enough? Can I fit in? I get that too. Question that I have for you, your younger years, did you play any sports or do anything at all like that?
So I did, and
I'm not surprised.
yeah.
I can kind of tell. So
Mhm.
what was your go-to?
Well, this is gonna sound kind of weird, but like so many young people in the '80s, I was dialed into soccer. But when I got to middle school, it was, the soccer scene was so competitive in my little bubble, that I wasn't able to make the team. And so I kind of hung up my cleats and didn't mess with soccer again. And then high school rolled around, and I thought to myself, man, all these sports are so competitive. All these kids in high school have been doing these sports since, like nonstop, and had special coaching and all that stuff since they were, I don't know, 5, 6, 8. What am I going to do? And I remember there was a demo going on of fencing, and so I thought, oh, this is kind of cool. Being a 14-year-old boy, having a sword and slashing people actually sounded kind of cool.
Oh
So
yeah,
I joined the fencing team,
sounds kind of
and
badass
actually
actually.
it was a lot of fun. And actually I went to Ohio State, and I was on the fencing team at Ohio State
That is really
for a
cool,
little
man.
while too.
Hell
Yeah,
yeah.
I got a varsity jacket, all that stuff. So
So
Oh,
it was
man.
good. It was fun, but
so the
it's an
reason I
obscure
was
sport.
the reason I was bringing that up is one of the things that I like to say, and I love to say it since I'm like the complete computer geek non-sports guy. You talk about the bodybuilding, performance enhancing drugs, like whatever it might be. I'm a big believer in even the professionals that might use a certain amount of performance enhancing drugs. I think that there are people in the professional industry and the amateur industry like us that look at things like what I'm going to do a metaphor or simile with sports, and that is there's a big difference between the high school football player that's gone into the game on Friday night and says, I don't give a damn about anything in the world other than I'm going to beat the team and I'm going to win on Friday. I don't care about anything else.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a whole different mindset to the person that's playing football that says, I freaking love football. I'm in high school. I want to learn everything and make this my career in life. It's a whole different way that you play the game. And I am absolutely in this game to play this and learn and excel and be the best that I can be for the rest of my life. Not just that one show.
I'm with you. Yeah, that resonates with me as well. So a few things. So John, that is an amazing story, and there are a few things that really kind of stood out for me as you were kind of going through your story. One is, and it, is the role that your struggles with alcohol have really played a role in your journey, and the idea that alcohol has played an outsized influence of alcohol or alcohol has played an outsized influence in your life. And your answer to that was, where do I draw the line? Some people that they draw the line, they have to, scuttle it. They have to remove it from their life. You've been able to find, this balance in your life, where fitness and kind of coloring out to the lines and so forth, and still being able to enjoy the things that that maybe it's a vice, call it whatever you want. But it's really about finding that right balance, and that really resonates with me a lot. The other thing was, a couple of things, and you went out of your way to talk about bodybuilding and how not everybody knows that performance enhancing drugs are really a big part of the bodybuilding culture, and you're absolutely right. But I got to tell you, man, the fact that you were able to come in fourth at a masters competition, though, just to give folks an understanding of in these bodybuilding competitions, there's age-based groups and then there's weight-based groups. And when you're competing in an age-based group, you're up there on stage with these guys. You're up on stage with people. Sure, they're your age, but you started your journey, your bodybuilding journey in 2015. So many of these guys started their journeys decades before you did. So when you get up on stage with these masters, and it's very possible that they have had history of using performance enhancing drugs. Maybe they're not doing it right now. Maybe they're competing in a natural competition, but that is a hell of an accomplishment, man, to be able to get up on stage in a masters competition against people who have been doing it for decades is awesome, man. That's truly impressive.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. I mean, it's, I look at it as like, I think I probably just got lucky that day, but there was some work that went into it, obviously. And
oh, hell yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah. I think the quote that resonates with me the most is that bodybuilding for you is an expression of health. And that's so true, man. That really resonates with me. So.
Yeah, and that's what I love about it, and just to put a point on it, I think it's great to be able to go to the gym and have my goal not just be like, how many sets and reps can I bang out? What can I lift today? But if my goal is like, I want to be able to stand on a stage and compete with other people in my age group and, get accolades for what I'm doing in that age group, to me, that's like kind of a next level goal. Right. Mm-hmm. And you were talking about motivation, like what keeps us going. And, we don't have to get into that right now, but that's where that leads. I think the more I think the bigger that, that my goals are, the easier it is for me to get out of bed and, make sure I'm showing up to my gym on time and force my way through these reps that might be hard and things like that.
Yeah, and that is so, I think that there is so much wisdom in what you're saying. I don't think that people recognize that it's in the doing of those hard things. And again, don't pursue bodybuilding. Don't pursue whatever you are passionate about. Pursue excellence in that thing, and it's in that pursuit that other great things will happen. It's not reversed. So have you ever read, are you familiar with Jocko Willink? He's an ex-Navy SEAL. He wrote the book Extreme Ownership. And one of the things he loves to say, and I thoroughly agree with this, is that, discipline is freedom. People don't like to hear that. People don't like to think of it in terms of, but when you have financial discipline, you have freedom. When you have discipline in your fitness and your nutrition, you have freedom to be able to enjoy the things you want to do. And it's just one of those interesting things about the world that, to me, really resonates with me in your story. So thanks for sharing that, man.
Yeah, man.
Hell yeah.
Sorry if I took too much time.
No, hell no. Hell no. That was perfect.
It was awesome.
So I guess it's my turn. I will. So in the spirit of efficiency, I will say this, that number one, I know you said you were born in 75. Bryan, you were a little younger. You're the youngest of the pack. I'm the oldest of the pack. I was born in 71. Obviously, a lot of our technology journeys very much overlap. I got into technology because I was really big on video games growing up. It was the Atari 2600 and then the 5200 that really resonated with me. And I was always fascinated by how the hell do you design these games like this? Somebody wrote all this code and this gibberish to me. And so I did the same thing you did, John. I went to summer camp, computer camp with all the other nerds and stuff. And it was awesome, man. I love the fact that I count myself as a nerd when I was growing up. And, I actually grew up in Utah. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. College wasn't really on the radar for me. So I went into the military. Went to the U.S. Navy. Served in the U.S. Navy for 6 years. I was a data systems technician. Luckily for me, the technology and the math and all that stuff, it kind of came easy to me, and so I was able to compensate for my lack of a real drive. And but the Navy was transformational for me on a whole number of different levels. One is professionally, that's what helped me to sort of see the art of the possible from a technology perspective. And to your point earlier, it was just a really cool time. The internet was brand new, and it was just such an amazing time to be in tech. And I was lucky enough to have had an opportunity to relocate here to Ohio. But the other thing that the Navy did for me, it opened my eyes to other people, and it broadened my perspective in terms of the way in which other people live their lives that I had never even considered. And so I had friends who were Navy SEALs. I had friends who were just wired differently that I was just so inspired by. But like you said, life happens. I got out of the Navy. I moved here to Ohio. I went to Ohio State. And I took a job in IT, and the same kind of thing set in for me. It's very sedentary life, very sedentary job, focusing on having kids, having a family, and, drinking a lot of alcohol, especially, in IT. We love our happy hours. It's a big part of the social, fabric of being in technology, and it really took a toll. And as I grew in tech, and as my responsibilities started to grow, I found myself, I was working in Huntington, actually. This was after I'd left Chase and everything, and I was a chief architect at Huntington. And when you're the chief architect at Huntington, you're in a very, very visible role. And I was very much struggling with my self-confidence and everything. And again, back then I was pushing 270 pounds. I was very, very different person
wow.
than today. Yeah. I could show you the pre-pictures.
We need to compare. Yeah, we need to compare pictures. Yes.
Just do some before and after.
Yeah. So I do have a quick story. So after I started my fitness journey, which I'll get back to, this is just a little tangent. Afterwards, after I lost a bunch of weight, I went to go get my driver's license renewed at the DMV, and I come walking in the DMV, and there's a really nice kid sitting behind the counter. I come walking in, he's like, "Hey man, how you doing? What can I do for you?" And I was like, "Hey, I just need to renew my license." He goes, "Okay, cool." So he goes, "Can I have your license?" I said, "Yeah." So I handed it to him. He looks at my license. He looks at me, looks at my license, looks at me, and he goes, "Nice job."
That's awesome.
Yeah, man. And so
that means so much to you. People don't understand.
I will never forget that moment, man.
Oh yeah,
I will never forget that moment. So anyway, so I was really struggling with my confidence. I think was the number one thing. There's a whole bunch of other things that I was struggling with, but that was kind of the tip of the spear, so to speak, in terms of the challenges that I was facing. And so, so as I said, I grew up in Utah. One of my best friends in the world is my uncle, and he's just an amazing guy. His name's Kevin, and he flew out to Columbus. It was around Thanksgiving and everything. We were talking. He's an entrepreneur. He owns his own company and all this stuff. And we were talking, and I was talking about the struggles I was facing. He looks at me and he goes, "There's a lot to be said for your level of your fitness and your confidence level." And I said, I know. In fact, I'm lucky enough to have a basement. I had some things I'd bought for, to build a gym and stuff like that. And I was like, I've been lifting some weights and stuff like that. It's been helping and everything. I'm not really making a whole lot of progress. He goes, when I get back to Utah, I'm planning on starting this program you may have heard of. It's called P90X. And I said, yes, I know. I have P90X. I've tried it. I hate it. I've no interest in doing P90X. He talked me into doing P90X with him. So he held me accountable, to your point earlier, John, about, the importance of accountability. And for 90 days, we did P90X. We held each other accountable every day. I didn't miss one workout. And the other side of it was P90X also comes with a whole nutrition program, and it is really, really strict. 1,900 calories, 50% of those calories come from protein, 25% from carbs, 25% from fat. And using MyFitnessPal to track every single calorie. Well, the long and short of it was, at the end of that 90 days, I'd lost 55 pounds. And yeah.
Congratulations.
And yeah, thanks, man. I was like featured on the Beachbody website. I won $500 and all this shit. And it was cool, man. It was cool. But you know what? The thing that really, that I'll never forget this. I knew that day 90 was coming and that I was going to be done. And I started asking myself, what the hell am I going to do then? What's day 91 going to be like? I mean, P90X was a bit of a crutch for me, my journey. Like it makes it easy when you have something laid out for you and you have somebody, partnering with you to help motivate you. What happens when that's gone? And fear kind of set in. And I'll never forget, I told myself, on day 91, I could just take the day off, man. and just be like, hey man, and just celebrate. Let's go celebrate. Let's go drink. Let's go eat as much as we can, eat some pizza, eat whatever. And I told myself, I'm like, nah, screw that, man. What's the one workout that you hated doing the most? And the one workout that I hated the most was yoga. 90-minute yoga session was, I mean, P90X, if you've never done P90X, Yoga X, oh my gosh, man. It's so hard because
Can I interject and tell you a
yeah,
P90X story real quick?
yeah, man. Hell yeah.
So if you listen to my time frame, I was talking about the 2003, right?
Yeah.
So and I also want to be clear, I never did any kind of bodybuilding competition until 2011. So for all those other years, and I would have never, even if you would have said you're going to go do bodybuilding, I would have laughed. Like, now I'm a regular guy. But P90X was really popular
Yeah.
in that early 2000s time frame.
Mm-hmm.
And I had friends, like, I had went through my transformation and lost weight, and people would ask me about P90X. And I remember one of my coworkers, he actually trained with me for a number of years, and he still works at Westerville today. He's got a healthy lifestyle, turned things around even more so than I did, and I mean, every bit as transformational as us, but he had P90X. He brought the whole thing into work for me to look at it because I was the expert, right?
Right.
And I remember very vividly looking at the plan, not knowing anything about it, like really looking at it at lunch break with him. And I'm like, holy shit. And he's like, what? And I'm like, because he wanted to know if I thought that it would work, if I thought that it was good.
Mm-hmm.
I looked through the plan and I'm like, holy shit. And he's like, what? And I'm like, this is way more and harder than what I do. Like, if you do this, you're going to be beyond me. I remember that. And I'm like, oh my, like, that's serious business.
It is. Yeah, it is. And for those listening, I will never espouse to somebody, go do P90X. You got to do what's right for you. The one side is yes, it's very hard. It's very effective. If you do it, it's very effective, but it's not a long-term thing, man. You can't do P90X forever and expect that, this is for somebody like me, where I needed to lose a hell of a lot of weight in a short amount of time. And it was very effective for that, but it's not something, now there were lessons that I learned doing it and so forth that I've kind of woven into my own, framework and so forth. But anyway, so I did that. And, so Kevin, we finished. We were so excited about the fact that we did this together, and we were like, man, we got to go celebrate, man. We got to do something. And we were like, well, maybe we could, maybe we'll go on vacation. We'll go to Cancun. We'll go to whatever. And then we started thinking, why don't we go do something that we couldn't have done before P90X? And I was like, have you ever heard of a Spartan race? He's like, yeah, man, let's go do a Spartan race. So a Spartan race is an obstacle course run. I could never have dreamed, like when I was, pushing 270, no way I could have done a Spartan race. But now I'm like, hell, let's go do it. Let's celebrate by doing a Spartan race. So that got me into doing Spartan races, and I did those for years. And unfortunately, on one of those races, I hurt the medial meniscus in my left knee, and I had to have surgery. And so when I went into surgery, he found that there was advanced arthritis in my knee, and he had to go in and actually remove all of the cartilage and everything. So my left knee on bone. And so in talking with my my knee doctor, he's like, dude, you got to stop the running. And I was like, okay. And I was like, what? But I love running. I love those races and stuff. And he sits down next to me, puts his hand on my shoulder, and goes, listen, man, I can't tell you what you can and can't do. You're going to do whatever you're going to do. But just whatever you do these 3 things. He said, number 1, keep the weight off. Try to be as light as you can. Number 2, keep your legs strong. Never skip leg day. And number 3, just minimize the high impact stuff. And if you're doing some high impact stuff, you need to start hurting, stop. And I was like, okay, well, I can do that. And about that time, I had been working out with Jack, my personal trainer at Metro Fitness, and he's a professional bodybuilder, and he lives it. Like he's the quintessential bodybuilder. He lives the bodybuilding kind of dream. That's all. That's you want to have a conversation about bodybuilding? Go talk to Jack, because he will talk your ear off. And I decided, maybe I was like, hell, bodybuilding, that sounds like something I could do that checks off all those 3 boxes. So that's what got me into bodybuilding. So bodybuilding for me really serves. And again, I'm with you guys. This is about, health. And I love how you said, I want to put this on a t-shirt. it's an expression of health. And to me, going back to that day 91, and then when that fear set in for me, and this idea that I could fall off the wagon, the one thing that I learned for myself is that having a sport, doesn't matter what the sport is. It could be Spartan races, it could be bodybuilding, it could be bowling, it could be whatever. Having a sport is a way that it helps me to hold myself accountable. Because to what you guys are saying, like, going to the gym and stuff like that to try to have like big muscles and big biceps, and that doesn't turn me on at all. That does not motivate me in any way. But the idea that, I'm competing for this, to your point, John, I have an opportunity to try something I've never done before and to compete in an arena with a bunch of people that I could never have dreamed in my wildest dreams of being in the same building as these kinds of people, these amazing people that are wired, feels to me at least like they're just wired differently. That kind of and it kind of goes back to what you were saying, Bryan. It's like that stuff scares the hell out of me. And it's like, man, when something scares the hell out of me, that's what I want to go pursue.
Let's go try it.
Let's go do it, man. So
I should
that's my
say,
story,
and I should say this about the competition thing, because I didn't talk much about the competition. My ex-wife actually was the one that started the competition idea, and I saw her through her very first show.
Yeah.
And I did all the meal prep, and I worked with the trainers. And I want to give a quick shout out to Jack, really the whole team there at Metro Fitness. You can't say enough for the guy. I mean, that, like, bodybuilding, he is bodybuilding.
Yeah.
Like he is, and there's a ton of the greats out there. He is bodybuilding, and him, and then we got Mike Davies, we got Mike Francois. I mean, Mike Francois, we've got the bodybuilder there, right?
Yeah.
Like,
no kidding, man. We're lucky.
Cool.
Yeah, and if there's one thing that I think is a common thread that goes through this entire conversation, is the importance of community and the importance of being inspired by others. And being willing to learn from others, and not having the humility to know that, I'm on this journey. I'm no expert. The only thing that I claim to be an expert in is what's worked for me, my own journey. I'm not, what's worked for me may not work for you, so.
Yeah. And if I could just add one thing there, I mean, I think there's something special about the journey and the community. It's at a certain point, if you do feel supported and if you do feel accountable, at least this is what I found. If I feel supported and I feel accountable and the community is part of that on my journey, then it makes the journey worthwhile. Yeah. I mean, it really, it becomes a little bit less about the outcome and the destination and a little bit more about the people that I'm sharing that journey with. And that's just a really cool thing.
Man, you could not have said it better. I think that is the perfect note to end this conversation on, is just giving you guys my heartfelt gratitude that I'm sharing this journey with you. So thank you so much for being here with me and talking with me and sharing this for the three of us, and for anybody else that's going to hear this in the community. It's really inspirational.
Likewise, this was awesome.
Yeah, man.
Appreciate it, Sean.
Yeah.
Great to hang with you guys today, Sean and Bryan.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, right on.
So we'll do this again.